Welcome to the second edition of UpStart in Indore. This is our second session in Indore. We have come before with marketing for startups, and we got a huge response then, and we thought we would like to do it again, and that's why we are here. So I'm Mansa, I'm your host for the evening. So UpStart is a series of meetups that we organize for the startup entrepreneurs, and that is hosted by PayU. So PayU, as you all know, that it is one of the leading payment service providers across sectors like SMBs, startups. We are of course in the startup community as well, SMBs, airlines, telecom, etc. So in this session of UpStart Indore, we are trying to go and talk about sales for startups. We have a lineup of speakers. We have Mayank Pratap from EngineerBabu. He's right here. We have Shashank, the CTO and co-founder of Wittyfeed. We have Abhinandan Gupta. He's the CEO and co-founder of Adited. And we do our last speaker for the day is Virat. He's the CEO and co-founder of Mobile. And they'll be coming in soon. So over to Mayank to start off the session. If you have any questions, we will limit it to 3 after each speaker, because we are also opening up the networking session, and they'll be available. The speakers will be available, and you can talk to them then. So over to Mayank.
So we started a tech services company. Then eventually we changed it as a marketplace model. Currently we have more than 12,000 curated freelancers whom we know who are good at something like someone is good in making e-commerce applications, someone is good in making dating applications. So we curated all the freelancers across the India. So how we did that? We were great in growth marketing. We were great in terms of doing the sales, and all things we did right away from Indore. So startup without the sales is a hobby. So if you know, anyone can build a product. But if you don't know how to sell it well, I don't think like you are going to sustain in the market longer time. And we talk about a lot of funding. We talk about a lot of making funnels and all. But the truth is, you just need a sales. You need a right sales. You need right customers. Sales is like a marriage. People do it with whom they trust. When identifying right customer is very important. So if you are looking for, maybe you get tons of the customers in our website. We used to get so many customers that they don't know why they are here. Someone was looking for the content writing, someone was looking for like SEO and other things. We realize we need people who understand the idea. We need people who are the right customer for us. So we identify who are the right customer for us. So people coming from Dubai, they were not the right customer because they cannot make the decision right away. People coming from Australia, they took a lot of time. They look for the proposals, they look for something different. So identifying right customers and providing them a right value is very, very important. So once you understand these are the right customers and you provide the right value, it's kind of marriage. You will get great sales. Yes, so if you have built any product and you sell your cover letter, how many of you have built the product? Okay, and other than that, you people are trying to do some startup. So how many of them can I say? Okay. So you can build any product. Before coming to the slide, I'll tell you how we started. Right, so you get more idea. We were building product for others. We started as an IT services company. But we realized when we can build product for others, we can build it for ourselves. but before we want to try कि आइडिया चलेगा कि नहीं चलेगा, ठीक है, उसके लिए हमने क्या किया, we have a simple idea. हमारे सभी कंपनी वाले जो है ना सेल्स के लिए परेशान होते हैं, उनको पता नहीं रहता है कि सही कस्टमर उनके लिए कौन है. जैसे सपोज if you talk about the IT companies, तो इंदौर के लिए 2000 कंपनियां, पूरे ऑल ओवर इंडिया में कितनी सारी हैं, करेक्ट. तो हमने कहा सभी लोगों के यहाँ सेल्स पर्सन जो होते हैं, और कितने लोग हैं जो क्वालिफाइड इंग्लिश को कन्वर्ट कर पाते हैं. सेल्स इज अगेन लॉन्ग प्रोसेस, आइडेंटिफाइंग राइट कस्टमर, सेंडिंग देम राइट प्रपोजल्स, टेकिंग अ फॉलोअप, फिर उनको नर्चर करना, फिर उनको वापस प्राइस पे नेगोशिएट करना. सो मेनी चैनल्स आते हैं. सो वी सेड कि ठीक है, आप लोग इफ यू आर गुड इन डेवलपमेंट, यू डू दैट पार्ट, वी टेक केयर ऑफ द सेल्स पार्ट. तो हम लोग सिर्फ सेल्स संभालेंगे. और we know you are good at something. Let's say one company in Indore, Viscount products, so they are good in making e-commerce applications. They have already done Snapdeal, and they have already done I guess Lenskart. So they are more qualified in building an e-commerce product compared to any other company. तो हम लोग उनको सिमिलर टाइप की लीड्स देते रहेंगे जो कि ई-कॉमर्स के आते हैं. तो आई थिंक दे कैन डू लॉट बेटर. तो ऐसे ही हमने सारे डेवलपर्स को ऑल ओवर इंडिया से हमने पिक किया. उनको हमने बोला कि आई विल गिव यू द सिमिलर वर्क. सो मे बी इफ यू आर गुड एट मेकिंग एन ई-कॉमर्स वेबसाइट, हम आपको ई-कॉमर्स के ही वर्क देंगे. तो आपको बार बार एक ही काम मिलता रहेगा. तो आपका प्राइस जो है, प्राइस आपको सेम लगने वाला है. यू कैन रीयूज द कोड, यू कैन आपका टाइम कम लगेगा. अभी जिसने ई कॉमर्स ऐप बनाया है, अगर उनको डेटिंग ऐप का वर्क मिलेगा, सो दे आर गोइंग टू स्पेंड लॉट ऑफ टाइम. यू गॉट मी आइडिया? तो इसे, तो दैट्स हाउ वी स्टार्टेड. So it's kind of it. Don't take silence for rejections. It's not about the handsome guy that gets a sexy girl. It's about the most persistent one. So when you got any client, you have to take follow-ups. You have to ask again and again why they are interested in the product or services, why they are not interested. Can you change something? Are you looking for the right kind of customers? अगर आपने कोई प्रोडक्ट बनाया है जो कि इंडियन कस्टमर को सर्व करता है, you have to go there, you have to meet them. If you have built any product that is going to solve the problem of any US customers, you need to identify what kind of emails, what kind of geographic area they are targeting. Maybe you need to set up your sales team in the morning time or in the evening time. The best way to get more customers around you to make it useful again and again. आपने कोई प्रोडक्ट बनाया है और उसमें अगर आपने इटरेट नहीं किया, you are not taking the right feedback from your customers, you cannot sustain so long. So we started, कोई भी प्रोडक्ट day one से परफेक्ट नहीं बनता. People ask कि 5 साल का give me 5 year down the plan, क्या करोगे, कैसे करोगे? We don't know. So once we have enough knowledge, once we take first step, we get to know कि second step में क्या करना है. Whether we are going to do it the right way or we are going to take a U-turn. So we realize we correct our mistakes once we take a step further. It's kind of people who are aggressive in sales, they understand it well. Because जब आप लिंक्डइन में किसी को कनेक्ट करते हो और आप जब रिज्यूमे आपको लोग भेजते हैं, तो एक ही टाइप की ईमेल्स बार बार आते हैं. I did so and so things, I did so and so things, ऐसा वैसा. तो सभी के रिज्यूमे all bullshit. We used to ignore them. कोई भी चीज जो सिंपल कैची होगी, जो मेरी कंपनी के हिसाब से होगी, those are the things we used to consider. When you are coming in the market, you have already built a product, make sure the UI looks great. If you have not done anything great in the PPT or in your website, it's not going to catch the right customers. Building product is easy, but if you can't manage your customer, you can't provide the services. So you know, like what kind of bad reviews you are going to get, correct? So I'm using a Basecamp. Basecamp is a SaaS-based product. I'm using from the last 7 or 8 years. I used to send almost 200 emails since last 8 years. Every time I got a reply within 1 minute. So if you can provide a great support, nothing is better than that. If you have built a product, you cracked 1 customers, you provided them a great services, ask for the reference. You have to ask them, can you refer me some other person? Because when you do sales for yourself, you attract a similar kind of the customer. But when your customers is happy with your services and he is going to speak out, you are going to get people who are going to believe on you, and they are not going to go anywhere. वो आप ही के पास में आएंगे, आप ही सेल्स करेंगे, because उनके फ्रेंड को आपने सर्विसेज से वैल्यू दी है. So this was a simple line that we changed and we doubled our company revenue. पहले क्या होता था, हम लोग जब किसी को ईमेल भेजते थे तो हम उनको लिखते थे कि मैं co-founder of EngineerBabu, I did so and so things, सब कुछ. But I realized इससे मैं वैल्यू क्या दे रहा हूँ अपने कस्टमर्स को. In fact, it seems like I'm egoistic. I did so and so things. Same हमारे डेवलपर भी फॉलो करते थे. जैसे कि okay, they are a developer, they are senior developer and EngineerBabu. I realized why we are doing. Client is paying us, so the GF is a project name. It's the product. So we change the signature by their product name. So it's kind of letting he's a senior developer of MTGF. So it seems like a more personalized email. You can see the reply also. I must admit, it seems like we are not outsourcing to some other remote company. You guys are working remotely for us and you are a part of the core team. So that's how the personalization works. Only by changing the signature, we doubled our company revenue. I think that's all from my side. If you guys have any question, I would love to answer.
What exactly means the discount part when it comes to the price negotiation?
ये बहुत अच्छा ट्रिक है. See, इंडिया में everybody wants discounts, right? तो irrespective कि आप कितना प्राइस रखते हो, they love to have कि यार negotiation किया कुछ discount हुआ तो अच्छा होगा. So what we do, we send them a targeted mail. We tell them कि ठीक है, checking by some observations, like we have an analytics based on that. We saw that this customer is coming again and again on our website and checking the pricing page. That means that simply tells he's more concerned about the price, right? फिर हम लोग क्या करते हैं, we send them a targeted mail saying, okay, I'm giving 50% discount right away, but you need to make a deal in 1 hour. And the counter gets started. 59, 58, 57, 56, and almost like when he's close to 27 or 30, we saw like 50% people whom we send the message, they got converted. Anyone else? Thank you.
If you guys have any more questions for Mayank, if you can take it up later, you can ask him during the networking session. So over to Shashank, he's just out there. So after he's done with his session, we will pick up your puzzle sheets and yeah, if you can just keep it ready on the side. Thank you.
Hi guys, what's up? कैसे हो सब? बढ़िया, ठीक है. अच्छा सेल्स के ऊपर बोलना है ना? मयंक बाबू एक्सपर्ट है, मैंने आपको अच्छे से समझाया होगा.
आपने बोली दिया कि सेल्स के बारे में बोलूंगा.
हाँ?
मतलब आपने बताई दिया कि मैं सेल्स के बारे में बोलूंगा.
टॉपिक की बोल रहे थे, है ना? हाँ. So I would be happily taking up some more doubts or question हो. जैसा if you have anything to ask, you can ask me. जो भी मेरा थोड़ा बहुत ध्यान होगा, I'll share with you guys. ठीक है, मतलब कुछ start करना ही पड़ेगा. So basically, sales is all about satisfying your customer. तो normally हम भी बोलता है. और मैं डिजिटल सेल्स के बारे में बात करता हूँ एक बार. एडवर्टाइजमेंट जो PR होता है, मीडिया प्रमोशन होता है, तो हम मीडिया पे यही करते हैं. लोग पूछते हैं मीडिया पैसे कैसे कमाते हैं, मीडिया एडवर्टाइजमेंट के थ्रू कैसे कमाते हैं. एडवर्टाइजमेंट में दो चीजें होती हैं. एक तो होती है आपका एम्प्लीफिकेशन, आपकी ब्रांड का. एक होता है आपकी ब्रांड का वैल्यू क्रिएशन. तो एम्प्लीफिकेशन और वैल्यू क्रिएशन में डिफरेंस ये है. एम्प्लीफिकेशन मतलब मैंने उसको कुछ लाख लोगों तक पहुंचाया, और उसका वैल्यू क्रिएशन उसको मैंने 1000 लोगों तक पहुंचाया, मैंने 1001 लोगों तक पहुंचाया जो उस ब्रांड को खरीद सकते हैं, जो रिलेट करते हैं. जैसे कि मैंने Hyundai की एक नई कार लॉन्च हुई है, उसका एक वीडियो बनवाया, एक नॉर्मल बंदे से बनवाया उसके ऊपर, और उसको 1 मिलियन लोगों ने देखा. और वही Hyundai की नई कार का वीडियो मैंने अक्षय कुमार के साथ बनाया, उसको केवल 100 लोगों ने देखा. इम्पैक्ट इसका ज्यादा होगा अक्षय कुमार वाले का, राइट. मतलब 1000 लोग देख रहे हैं नॉर्मल आदमी को, और 100 लोग देख रहे हैं अक्षय कुमार उस ब्रांड को एंडोर्स करते हो. तो सेल्स में ब्रांडिंग बहुत 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 ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. आपका प्रोडक्ट ठीक ठाक होना चाहिए. मान लो आपके सामने 2 प्रोडक्ट हैं, एक प्रोडक्ट बहुत फाड़ू है, एक ठीक ठाक है. वो ठीक ठाक प्रोडक्ट को अगर अच्छा बंदा उसकी एंडोर्समेंट कर रहा है, उसकी ब्रांडिंग प्रॉपर तरीके से की गई है, तो पीपल विल बाय. लाइक एप्पल का जो डिवाइस है मुश्किल से 4-5 हजार बनता होगा, लोग लाख रुपए पे करते हैं. और वही डिवाइस आप दूसरे जो चाइना वाले देते हैं, Xiaomi वगैरह, वो 12-15 हजार इंसान को मिल जाता है. बिकॉज ऑफ द परसेप्शन एप्पल हैज क्रिएटेड फॉर इट्स ब्रांड. जब 1998 में जब iPod लॉन्च हुआ था, तो स्टीव जॉब्स ने ऐसा नहीं बोला था कि मैं MP3 प्लेयर लॉन्च कर रहा हूँ. He has created a device which is capable of storing 2000 songs in your pocket. That was a brand perception he has created. तो कोई भी चीज अगर आपको बेचना है, तो उसके लिए सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज होती है, एक तो प्रोडक्ट अच्छा होना चाहिए फर्स्ट थिंग. सेकंड थिंग, उसका ब्रांड परसेप्शन बड़ा तगड़ा होना चाहिए. ब्रांड परसेप्शन कैसे बनता है? हम हैव सीन अ वीडियो ऑफ दिस गाय साइमन सिंह, गोल्डन सर्कल. थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ. तो कोई भी इंसान जब कोई सामान खरीदता है, वो इससे नहीं खरीदता है कि वो चीज क्या करती है. गाने सुनने के लिए लोग MP3 प्लेयर यूज कर सकते हैं 2000 रुपए वाला, लेकिन वही गाने सुनने के लिए लोग iPod यूज करते हैं 15,000 रुपए. बिकॉज एप्पल नेवर सेल कि मैं गाना सुना रहा हूँ, वो बेचता है कि मैं क्यों सुना रहा हूँ. समझ लो. आपने कभी सोचा कि लैपटॉप कंपनी से लोग MP3 प्लेयर खरीदेंगे? कभी लैपटॉप कंपनी से लोग फोन खरीदेंगे? जो बंदा मैक बनाता था उससे फोन खरीद रहे, उससे iPod खरीद रहे. रीजन भी होता है बैड परसेप्शन के साथ. तो बेसिकली किसी भी इसमें वीडियो प्ले करता हूँ, वीडियो प्ले कर सकता हूँ. तो वीडियो देखो चलता है.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet, they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight? The Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. Sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the .com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was, Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich, and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys, now we'll improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first, he didn't get rich, he didn't get famous, so he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Jeffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world, and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat-screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo is a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you, we don't need it, we don't like it, you're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad. But he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time, to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority, will we live in a just world? It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed him not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
और तो बहुत लोग प्रोवाइड करते हैं। तो नॉर्मल सेल्स गाय को हमेशा अवॉर्ड करेगा, हाँ मेरे पास ये है। सो मैं सेल्समैन नहीं हूँ, CEO of the company, but I recruit lot of people, I interview lot of people. तो बेसिकली आप किसी अच्छे टैलेंट को हायर करते हो लाइक सेल्स, आप अपनी कंपनी को भेज रहे हो उसको लाने साथ के काम करने के लिए विजन को फॉलो। आई नेवर टेल देम कि हम ये करते हैं, हम उन्हें बताते हैं क्यों करते हैं और वो क्यों आपके विजन का लाइन हो रहा है और साथ में काम करने के लिए। And you can see my team. आज सैटरडे यहाँ पर होते हैं, they work day and night. एक बंदा 5 बंदों का काम करता है। 120 लोगों की टीम कैसे बड़ी सिग्नल लाइन्स पर हमारे कॉम्पिटिटर्स की टीम होती 500 लोग। तो स्वीट मैं उसका परसेप्शन ऐसा बना हुआ कि यार कॉफी पी के पेट तो खराब कर रहा हूँ, लौट के यहाँ पर हमारे जूस जूस की ब्रांड नेम चालू करते हैं, चेन चालू करते हैं, लोग क्या पाएंगे बिकॉज आजकल लोग हेल्थ कॉन्शियस हो रहे हैं। जो बंदे कॉफी पे मीटिंग करने वाले हैं वो जूस को ही कर सकते हैं, जो हस्बैंड बॉयफ्रेंड कॉफी पे मिलने वाले हैं जूस को ही कर सकते हैं। Why only coffee? It's all about brand perception, and you portray your brand perception by how, say why, how, and what. Simple. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any question, you can ask me. आपको बता दो सारी चीजें, मुझे कुछ लोग होंगे जो आपके साथ अपने आप आए, किसी को फोर्स कभी भी नहीं करता। वो जो हायर पीपल लोग बोलते हैं वो 50,000 सैलरी से, तो हमें दे सकता, मैं 40,000 दे सकता हूँ। ये चीज हम करने वाला, इसका विजन ये, अगर वो बंदे की गली होगी बेहतर कुछ करने, तो ये कमांड होगी, तो 7 से लंबे समय तक रहेगा, आपकी रोड पर घटा भी तो उसको बंद करने में लगा रहेगा, तो इनके रोड डूबी नहीं, आपके साथ रोड हो गई, तो उसकी सीरीज अलग है। उसमें आप इसको नहीं कर सकते कि सारे के सारे आई जाए, तो जो बंदा आना चाहेगा वो ही आएगा। उसको वाइड समझ में आ रहा है ना, फिटनेस इसकी मैच कर रही हो गया, इससे नहीं कर रही वो बिल्कुल। अब एप्पल वाला को लगो चलो, तो बोलता है कि मेरे पापा की ठेला चलाता है, तो पापा ठेला लगाते थे कपड़े के और बेचते थे, दुकान बड़े हो गई। उन तरह डेली में मेरे को तो पापा को दुकान लेके देते, तो बचपन से देख रहा हूँ उनको, वो हिसाब भी टाइप ठेला लेके करते हैं, एक तरीके से करते हैं। मेरे पास वो बहुत सारे आइडियाज को करते हैं, वो अच्छे से कर सकते हैं। जिसको वो कर रहे हैं वो जो नहीं कर रहा है आपके विजन को ध्यान रखना चाहिए। जो भी आप ब्रांडिंग कर रहे हो आपके विजन से अलाइन है, अगर वो विजन से अलाइन नहीं होगा तो लोग आप पर भरोसा नहीं करेंगे। इनका विजन तो कुछ बोल रहा है और ये ब्रांडिंग को भी करना तरीके से इसी वजह से होती है। आपका विजन कुछ बोलता है आप कर कुछ नहीं। जैसे उबर का है, उबर कार ऑन नहीं करते हैं, उसकी सारी एग्रीगेटर मॉडल है, वो खुद की कार खरीदने लगेगा तो ड्राइवर्स को उनसे भरोसा उठ जाएगा, तो यार क्या भरोसा है आपको निकाल लो खुद की कार चला, सारा बोला के बता है सिंपल। रिलेशनशिप बिल्ड करो, आप शेयर कर दो और हम आपको पे करेंगे। लिंक शेयर करते हैं, मेरे साइड पे ट्रैफिक आता था तो हमारा ट्रैफिक इंक्रीज हो गया, 500 के ज्यादा मिले, और रोज 50-60 लोगों से बात करना, हर हफ्ते उनको पेमेंट करना, तो वो वेरी टीडियस प्रोसेस। प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करी थी उन लोगों को जो हमारे लिंक पोस्ट करते थे, आर्टिकल जो हम क्रिएट करते थे। फिर हमने सोचा यार इम्पैक्ट बहुत कम है, केवल 50 लोग, 50,000 चाहिए, 50 लाख चाहिए, 1 मिलियन चाहिए, जिनके लिए कुछ सॉल्व कर रहा हूँ. तो हम लोग काम करते हैं, टेक वाले बनते हैं आगे. We solve this problem by technology. It is platform. So we have a platform बनाया. It was called wireline.com. It is still there. So wireline is a platform where anyone who has a big social media fan following, they can log in there. They can get any type of content relevant to their audience and post it on their social media profile. Our system tracks किस बंदे ने कितने यूजर इस कंट्री से भेजे, उसके बेसिस पर उनको हर महीने पेमेंट जाती है. So I proudly say that every month 20,000 लोगों के घर पीढ़ी हो जाए. तो इंस्पिरेशन कहाँ से आती है? एक बंदा था, एक पाकिस्तान एफिलिएट हमारा, उसकी वाइफ को बच्चा होने वाला था हॉस्पिटल में थे. तो हमारी पेमेंट से हर महीने के बिना महीने पे करते हैं. तो उसका मैसेज आता है मेरे पास कि भाईजान मेरे को पैसे की जरूरत है, मेरे 5 लाख रुपए का अमाउंट आने वाला है अगले महीने, मतलब महीने के एंड में, बट आज तो आप दे नहीं सकते, लेकिन मेरे को बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत है पैसे. मैंने बोला 12,000 प्रोसेस है, इमीडिएट पैसे ट्रांसफर करो बंदे. उस बंदे के रात को बच्ची का फोटो आया, उसने पूरी पोस्ट बना के डाली. दैट वाज द अमेजिंग मोमेंट इन आवर लाइफ, एंड दैट्स व्हाट ड्राइव्स अस. तो छोटी छोटी चीजों का ध्यान रखो, बहुत छोटी छोटी चीजें, सेल, मार्केटिंग, ब्रांड परसेप्शन, ये चीजें 2015 तक कोई जानता भी नहीं था, राइट. 2015 के बाद होना चालू हुआ सारी चीजें. वो क्यों? क्योंकि 2010 से 15 तक हमने अपना बेस इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग करना, तो हमेशा एक चीज फॉलो करी, बी गुड. I always believe in this quote, this universe is a big genie, it always says, your wish is my command. Simple. Thank you so much, guys. और किसी को डाउट है बाद में तो मैसेज कर देना मुझे.
So before we call up Abhinandan, we'll collect the puzzle sheets right now. You can give it to there's one guy in the back. You can give it to him or you can give it to us here.
Hello, hi guys. Hi. I know coming to an event, a startup event on a Saturday evening is a task in itself, at least for me. So, to introduce myself, I'm Abhinandan from Adited co-working, and the event today is on the topic sales for startups, right? But before moving to the topic, I would like to introduce you a bit about my company, Adited. So, to start with, Adited is a co-working space. Adited is a co-working space based in Indore, apparently the first one. And we have 3 branches at present, 2 at Vijayanagar, 1 at Palacia. We recently have started the operations at Palacia branch 3 days back. And at present we are a community of around 100 plus co-workers who are from various domains. Like you count the domain, we have the guy from that domain. And all the companies, plus our USP is the flexibility in the packages and the client servicing that we do. Now, in this 4-liner introduction of Adited, what I have done is what is called as marketing. I was marketing my brand here in the last 4 lines because many of you don't know about Adited and many of you don't know about it. So, marketing is done. Right. Now talking about the sales. What is sales?
So I want to ask you, how many of you guys are into startup, like who are starting something or are planning to start anything? Please raise your hands. And how many of you have rented out an office already for your work? Alright. So we can post to the guys who raise their hand for the so we can meet later. So the discussion that we will be doing after this this whole event would be the sales, direct sales that I would be doing. Talking about the Adited. Why I told this whole process of Adited introduction, then telling it to marketing, then talking about the sales thing, because I want to tell that marketing and sales can be done anywhere at any point of time. You need not have to fix your platform, you need not have to fix your time or schedule your things for that. Whenever you see your target audience, I'm talking to you. This is the marketing of myself and marketing of Adited. Talking directly to you guys would be the sales, convincing you, knowing your problem, knowing your pain points would be the sales, and converting you would be the part of sales. Right? I'm sure many of you know about this, right? But to start with, I had to make a start. Then where are the things failing up? Why there are many startups who are still not coming up according to the product? Strong product build किया है, strong services है, बहुत अच्छी client servicing, बहुत अच्छी team है, sales team, good marketing team. Where is the gap? Can anyone answer this? Any idea? Anybody has failed in this thing or marketing or sales thing? Can anyone answer?
Not being able to convince the customers and converting the leads into sales.
Converting the leads into sales, right? Anyone else?
Yeah, but then I just want to correct. You said anyone who has failed.
Yeah.
I mean, I have not failed as of now. I would like to answer it. It's basically the approach of attitude. It's how you are selling and whom you are selling. The right attitude is like when you get the right customers.
Sure. Anyone?
Your explanation of the product or service and their understanding of
Okay.
missing out kind of innovation, how we are different from others. And it made for patient. My product is not having any sense value. It's not having significant. I'm not able to justify why my product is better than the existing.
Showing the values of your product.
Yeah, values of the product. We always used to have in our phone shoe, right?
So, almost all of you are right somewhere from your frame of reference. But I myself see, and being my individual's point of view is, it's the content, right? मार्केटिंग प्लान हो गया है, सेल्स मार्केटिंग के बाद प्लान हो जाएगी, लीड्स हैं अपने पास, अच्छी लीड्स हैं, 1000-2000 लोगों का डेटा है अच्छे से, उनको बताना क्या है? आपका प्रोडक्ट भी बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग, सर्विस इज आल्सो वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग, सब अच्छा है, पर बताना क्या है? क्या आपके सबसे पहले तो मार्केटिंग कर रहे हैं, मार्केटिंग के लिए प्लेटफॉर्म सिलेक्ट, ऑफलाइन मार्केटिंग है, डिजिटल मार्केटिंग है, क्या डालना है वहां पर? हैप्पी दिवाली पोस्ट, ईद पोस्ट, नोबडी गिव्स अ डैम अबाउट दैट, क्या करना है? बट वंस यू show your value of your product, why your brand is valuable to your consumers, and why your consumers should see to it. You have to get that point to your consumers. So in marketing, what I believe is, show what they want to see and tell what they want to listen. Not आपके प्रोडक्ट के बारे में आप परफेक्ट हैं, they don't have anything to do with that. आपका प्रोडक्ट बेस्ट इन द वर्ल्ड है, they don't have anything to do with that. They have to do with उनको कैसे बेनिफिट होना है और वो आप कैसे शो कर रहे हैं, right? So let's say Adited का एग्जांपल ले लेता हूँ. We never have done any paid marketing. Trust me, हमने आज तक कोई paid marketing नहीं किया है. We are completely depending on word of mouth. We serve our client. जितने clients आते हैं, जैसे startups आते हैं, we provide them space according to their convenience. आपको आना ठीक है. We are happy with the fee and free orders as well. ठीक है, आप आओ. But why we do is हमारा client servicing उसमें strong होता है. We serve all kind of clients, corporates, startups, leadership guys, students, interns, anyone in it. One, इसमें बल्क मार्केटिंग होती है. I'm talking very blunt here. मार्केटिंग और सेल्स का इवेंट है, that's why. बल्क मार्केटिंग हो रहा है. आप अगर मेरे यहाँ पे 2 वर्किंग पे बैठते हैं, आपको मैंने 1 हफ्ता सर्व किया कॉफी, you will definitely talk to 5 of the guys. That place is good. अब ये चीज मैं सोशल मीडिया पे नहीं बता सकता कि यार we are this good, we have the best client servicing. मैं चिल्ला के बोल भी नहीं सकता हूँ we are the best, we are the best. The best thing that I could have done to spread the word across about my co-working is to serve the clients who are coming. So there comes the sales point now. Content अभी और बचा है बात करना, but sales कैसे आया है यहाँ पर? We are flexible. We negotiate to win-win. हम ऐसा भी नहीं करते free में नहीं होती, but we negotiate there. Yes, tell us what is best thing that you can give and what is best thing that we can give to you, and we come to a consensus here, right? Coming back to the content part. Now, content में the thing is, you just put anything that you want to show. No, never do that. Put that thing in your commercials of the social media or offline media that your client is getting benefit. That is the most important thing. Content ही जाता है सब जगह, marketing, sales secondary plan होता है. Content is the most important part, right? So coming back to sales, so sales there are few things I need to tell you about. आपके lead से आप जब भी बात करते हैं, be ready with your end point. Like what is the thing जिस पे आपको उसको ultimately लाना है. You cannot just बहस नहीं कर सकते हैं. You know आपका अगर cold call कर रहे हैं या in person बात कर रहे हैं, you just all in the market is very tricky. Trust me. मैं जितना सोचा था initially 6 months I failed a big time, but post that I understood that what this market needs. This market needs कि उसका ego satisfied हो. Especially जो मैंने initially clients और target audience handle किया. Be satisfied the ego of जैसा जो बोलते थे वो वहाँ पर ब्रांड वैल्यू नहीं बनती थी. आई नो, और ब्रांड वैल्यू से पहले मुझे मेरा बिजनेस चलाना, बिजनेस चलाने के लिए मुझे पैसा रोटेशन पे लाना. दैट्स व्हाई वी टैकल्ड ऑल काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. एक बार जब सेट होने लगा, व्हेन वी ओपनड आवर सेकंड ब्रांच, तब हमें थोड़ा समझ आया दैट यस नाउ इट्स अ टाइम टू मार्केट आवरसेल्फ. लेट्स मार्केट. मार्केटिंग में हमने स्टार्ट किया फेसबुक पेज और इंस्टाग्राम को थोड़ा और स्ट्रॉन्ग करना. वहां पर इट्स नॉट लाइक कि जो देखो वो पोस्ट हो रहा है. नो, वी पोस्टेड द क्वालिटी कंटेंट. क्वालिटी कंटेंट मींस दैट शुड बी रेलेवेंट. इवेंट्स वी यूज्ड टू डू बिकॉज़ इवेंट्स में लोग आते हैं, वहां पर हमें पता चलता है यस दिस इज द थिंग. सो हर ब्रांड हर प्रोडक्ट के लिए बेसिकली different strategy होती है for their marketing and sales. So I cannot generalize this thing here, but the point of generalization here is again content. आपका content proper sell करें. So it's all about the content. I actually running late today, so I need to leave. So please, if any questions, I'm ready. Any questions?
How many startups are working with?
Okay, so the startups at present we have 40 plus companies working with us, and in our community there are around 60 to 70 virtually and physically.
They are coming like different domain and
all from different domains. So majorly from IT domain only. I should say 60 to 70% from IT domain.
How do you charge or how do you?
See again, that's what I said. We are quite flexible. We are quite flexible with that. We can discuss things in person. Anyone else? I'm sorry? Virtual services like if you don't want to rent out your office, you don't want a physical space to work, you want just your GST and business registration to get done, I will assist you. Our team will assist you with that. So, anyone? And just one more thing. 2nd December we are launching our 3rd space. So this is the event marketing that I am again doing about the event. 2nd December We are launching our third space at Palasian right next to Valencourt Institute. You all are most welcome there. So I would love to see all the faces there. Sagar from my team is going. He's the youngest staff, Sagar. So he handles all the client servicing and client things that we do. I don't have a big team. हमारा बहुत छोटा टीम है and we work day and night to serve our clients like that. We make relationship, we build relationship before business. It's like that. So business is not important. That important. It's important.
Thank you, everyone. So our last speaker for the evening is Virat. So he will speak to you guys now. And again, if you have any questions, you can ask him now, or you can take it up later during the networking session.
So we have to talk about sales, right? The perspective, how to sell yourself, sell your company, sell your people, whatever you find, how you can sell it now. So just to start with, first is the price points. So the thing which actually no one wants to talk about first. देखो एक and again not my philosophy, I read it from somewhere. आपको एक ऑर्डर की कोई चीज बेचनी है, तो कुछ 60 रुपए की चीज बेचनी है, तो कितना मिनट लगते हैं आपको अमेज़न में वो चीज को डिसाइड करने में मुझे लेना है. How much minutes it take? Based on आपका टोटल इनकम कितना है उसके रेशियो में उसका पर्टिकुलर रेट करेगा. तो ये तो $1 मिलियन के आपको सेल्स करनी किसी को तो कितना टाइम लगता है? It takes या इंडिया नेशनल प्लेन खरीद रहा है पिछले 6-7 साल से. ठीक है, फर्क क्या है? So every startup, whenever you actually want to start from anywhere, you should first find out क्या एक्चुअली चीज की कॉस्ट कितनी है, उसका टाइम कितना लगने वाला है, और सामने वाले को डिसीजन लेने में कि यू आर अ बेटर पर्सन टू टेक दैट डिसीजन. जैसे आपको अगर हेडफोन बाय करना है, आपको कितना टाइम लगाते होंगे जनरली एक हेडफोन बाय करने के लिए? I'm taking very land examples. I don't want to go on startups as an idea. First, you need to understand yourself more, then you can understand your customers. अगर आप अपने आप को नहीं समझते तो आप अपनी कस्टमर को कभी नहीं समझ पाएंगे, क्योंकि आपके कस्टमर भी आप ही हो. एक हेडफोन लेने में कितना टाइम लगता है?
Depends on its cost.
Depends on cost. अगर आपको सिर्फ एक रॉ रफ पर्पस के लिए
₹100 हुआ तो फिर immediate 5 मिनट का तो थोड़ा टाइम बनना होगा और थोड़ा.
कितने स्पेसिफिकेशन से कितने फीचर्स देखते हो अमेज़न पे जाने के बाद? जब लेते हो हेडफोन वो कम से कम 200 ऑप्शन दिखाता है तो पागल हो जाते हैं. तो एग्जैक्टली वो अपने कस्टमर के साथ भी होता है. जब हम कोई मैं चार्ट से डिसाइड नहीं कर पा हेडफोन लेके ये होता है. देन वे आप लास्ट में कहाँ रुकोगे? आप किसी से पूछोगे. जब डेटा लिमिट जब आपको कोई एक्सपर्ट मिलेगा आप उससे पूछोगे कौन सा मैं एक्सपर्ट लूं, तो आपको बोलेगा आप ये वाला ले लो, आप वाला डिसाइड कर लोगे, आप ले लो. तो सेल्स का मतलब फाइनली हम कहाँ पहुंच गए? सबसे बड़ा कॉर्नर ऑफ द सर्कल. अब इस पूरी प्रोसेस को समझिए. क्वेश्चन अभी आपने पूछा था थोड़ी देर पहले शशांक से कि हम लोग कुछ एक सामान बेचते हैं. मैं एक्स वो यूज करूंगा, कोई मटेरियल का स्पेसिफिक नाम नहीं लेना चाहता बिकॉज़ मटेरियल इज नॉट मैटर. अब उसका डिसीजन कौन लेता है? उसका डिसीजन टेकर जो है वो डिसीजन टेकर कहीं तो खाना खाता होगा, कहीं बैठता होगा, किसी लोग से बात करता होगा, वो किसी को तो एक्सपर्ट समझता है उस इंडस्ट्री में. अगर वो आदमी बोले कि ये प्रोडक्ट इज बेटर देन दैट प्रोडक्ट, डू यू थिंक द चांसेस ऑफ योर सेल्स विल इंक्रीज और नॉट? तो आपका काम क्या रहेगा? उस आदमी को ढूंढना जिसकी वो सुनता है. ठीक है, अब अपन एप्पल का केस लेते हैं. एप्पल दोनों तरफ से प्रोसेसिंग पावर क्या है? सैमसंग ये सारे 8 कोड ये कोड वो कोड पता नहीं 50 स्पेसिफिकेशंस बताते रहते हैं. ठीक है, वीवो 50 चीजें बताता रहता है. ओप्पो ने सिर्फ फोकस करा है सेल्फी के ऊपर. लेकिन ये नहीं सुना, जस्ट वॉच द एड्स वेरी वेरी रियलिस्टिक. किसी का कोई भी आदमी कुछ बेचने की कोशिश करता है, just watch him, what he also trying to sell and what he is trying to portray himself as a company also. अभी आप पूरा Wittyfeed का ऑफिस देख सकते हो तो you can understand what they are trying to sell. Every there is a place where they are selling themselves. What the company does. जैसे स्टिकर से लेके वो वहाँ के आदमी बने हुए हैं, से लेके वो आइडिया लिखा हुआ है, वो लिखा हुआ है, ये 3 लोग हैं, ये इवेंट के लिए इन्होंने पहले से प्लान कर रखा था, इसका मतलब इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर शॉप्स को बनाने से पहले just come to they were expecting this type of events to happen and occur. So in your sales pitch, in your sales idea, you have to actually understand कि आप जो बेच रहे हो वो उसके बारे में बात कौन कर रहा है करेगा. तो कस्टमर जो है ना वो कस्टमर एक ही चीज से पूछता है आप मुझसे पहले कितने लोगों ने आपके ऊपर ट्रस्ट किया है. उसके अलावा उसको बाकी किसी चीज से कोई मतलब नहीं, उसको समझ में भी नहीं आता. हम में से कितने लोग जो एप्पल का फोन परचेस करते हैं उसमें अगर मान लीजिए 1 मिलियन ऐप्स है तो कितनी ऐप्स हम यूज करते हैं 8, 10, 20, 50. और हम क्यों लेते हैं क्योंकि एक्स आदमी ने हमारे हमसे पहले ले रखा है. उन्होंने क्या करा. सो हाउ द मार्केटिंग इज एक्चुअली डन एट अ I can explain you from the phone level because I've seen the phone industry revolutionize from smartphones, from Nokia phones, the mistakes which Nokia did, the Apple took benefit of it, and how the market moved on. So आपको जब भी कोई प्रोडक्ट बनाए तो आप ये आइडेंटिफाई करिए कि आपका कस्टमर कौन है. सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है. हर व्यक्ति अलग अलग कस्टमर सेगमेंट के ऊपर अटैक करता है और कैसे अटैक करता है ये बताता हूँ. आपको याद है जब नोकिया 2007 I started as a base program. नोकिया E71 लॉन्च होने वाला था. E7 एंड उसका बस था 41,000 का फोन था 2007. ठीक है. नोकिया के फोन 60 से 120 मेगाहर्ट्ज के फोन्स थे. ओके एंड देयर वाज अ बज़ अराउंड इट. नोकिया डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड बिटवीन 2003 to 2007 24 बिलियन यूरो dividends to their shareholders. समझ गए इतना प्रॉफिट था उसके पास, इतना पैसा था. अब उनकी बोर्ड मीटिंग में डिस्कशन हो रहा था कि वो आगे की प्रोडक्ट लाइन क्या बनाए. क्या वो लोग अपनी मेरी छोटे फोन्स पे फोकस करें जो मार्केट $20, $100, $150. और $150 वाज द मोस्ट एक्सपेंसिव फोन एट दैट टाइम. क्या उस मार्केट पे फोकस करें कि वो लोग अपने $20-30 वाले मार्केट पे फोकस करें. तब हम लोगों ने नोकिया एंगेज निकाला था. देयर लॉट ऑफ हाई एंड फोन्स वर फेलिंग सिग्निफिकेंटली बट दे वर एक्चुअली टारगेटिंग अ 3%, 17% एंड 80% मार्केट. आपकी जिस भी कैटेगरी में आप काम करते हैं उस कैटेगरी में 3 टाइप के कस्टमर्स हैं. 3%, 17% एंड 80%. 80% आर द पीपल हु डोंट जो आपका पूरा मार्जिन मिस कर देंगे. ये सस्ता प्रोडक्ट चाहिए जो कि वीवो खरीदेंगे, वीवो से सस्ता कुछ और आएगा तो 6,000 का फोन खरीदेंगे, 6,000 से सस्ता कुछ आएगा तो वीवो खरीदेंगे. एक होता है 17%, दैट इज योर मिडिल क्लास. मिडिल क्लास ऑलवेज बाइज व्हाट द 3% ऑफ द पीपल बाय. सेम थिंग हैपेंस फॉर द इंडस्ट्रियल सेल्स आल्सो. If you say that Aisha is buying my component, then it automatically triggers जो कि लोकल लेवल पे कोई शाफ्ट बना हो बोलेगा मैं इनका ले लेता हूँ क्योंकि मैं आयशा लेता हूँ उनका. Automatically 3% of the people actually drive the sales for the whole wallet. They decide what's going to happen. जब भी आपने सुना होगा कि रिसेशन आता है तो this 3% of the people stop spending the money. This 3% of the companies stop spending the money. Buying new factories, hiring new people, hiring new products, and automatically it has a replication effect over overall economy के ऊपर सब effect आता है. 3% होगा. अब इसको मैं मतलब कि मुझे मालूम है आप लोग कौन सा व्यक्ति अलग अलग प्रोडक्ट्स के लिए हो सकता है, सबका अलग अलग सेल्स पिच हो सकता है. पर इसको समझने का कंसेप्चुअली समझाने की कोशिश करता हूँ. So when Apple launched the phone in $500, that was 2008 was मैं पहला जो submit किया था. They said that we are going to launch it at $500. Steve Ballmer was laughing on the stage. He said we had the best smartphone at $100, and these stupid people are trying to sell the phone at $500. What happened? अब $100 के ऊपर आपका मार्जिन क्या है? मान लीजिए $10, $15, $20. Over the period of time, Apple के $500 के फोन पे कितना मार्जिन था? $100, $150. आज भी Apple को मार्जिन अपने मेंटेन करके चलता है. iPhone X 1.05 lakh. क्या प्रॉफिट मार्जिन है? So the person who has money has more buying power, has more muscle power. The more muscle power you gain over the period of time, it becomes an aspirational product for the remaining 70% of the population. एक स्टैटिस्टिक्स और बता रहा हूँ जो आप लोगों को शायद मैं सेल्स की बात करना नहीं चाहता हूँ मैं सेल्स के भी लास्ट उस पे भी आऊंगा कि अगर आपको बेचना पड़ गया ना जाकर तो आपके प्रोडक्ट में गलती मत करो, आपको काम किसी और को करना. If you have a sales team in your office, then you are not in the right business. Very raw statement. If you have a marketing team, you are in the right business. But if you have a sales team, you are in the wrong business. The moment you have a sales team, that means you have competition.
competition is killing you, bleeding you, you have nothing which can differentiate you from your competitor other than price. जब भी कोई आदमी बोले कि ये आदमी से सिर्फ प्राइस में डिफरेंशिएशन है, तो वो काम करो ही मत. वो काम आज भी तो अगर आपको खा जाए, ऐसे इकोनॉमी खा जाए. If I have to give you an example of that, let's say you take Japan as an example. First of all, read books. मतलब वो सबसे important है. So if you take Japan as an example, Japan started making, let's say, picture tubes for the TV. The Korea and China started manufacturing that. Japan moved up the ladder. Japan ने बोला कि semiconductors की manufacturing का design used to happen from US. Slowly what they did, they started designing in their country. वो manufacturing इतनी और चली गई. जब वो मैन्युफैक्चर करने लगे सेमीकंडक्टर्स एंड हार्ड वो बनाने लगे, तो धीरे धीरे करके पैकेज्ड प्रोडक्ट्स जापान बनाने लग गया. दैट वाज द 1995 era when Microsoft came up with its own OS and Microsoft gave the OS to all the Japanese manufacturers. When PC manufacturing went to the other countries, Japan moved on. Now Japan is moving into the age of robotics. अब robotics भी इतना कॉमन हो गया कि सारे देश बोल रहे हैं हम अपनी robotics मशीनरी बना रहे हैं, तो they have started moving towards AI. The way the country is moving is the way the people are also moving in that direction. अगर आपके ऑफिस में वो आपको नहीं पता नेक्स्ट आपके लिए, और वो अगर सिर्फ सेल्स टीम है नेक्स्ट, तो इट्स जस्ट अ मैटर ऑफ टाइम, क्योंकि कोई ना तो कोई सस्ती क्वालिटी में उससे घटिया प्रोडक्ट बना ही लेगा और आपसे अच्छा भी बना सकता है. इट्स अ मैटर ऑफ टाइम. ओके, नाउ coming to the element of sales. So the best part about trying to sell something to somebody, you have to find all the influential points, how he gets influenced. वो आदमी influence कैसे होता है? Influence होने के जो तरीके हैं, अभिनंदन जिस तरीके से बात की थी कंटेंट की, आदमी कंटेंट पढ़ता है जब जहाँ डायरेक्ट सेल्स नहीं होती, जहाँ हिंट्स दिए जाते हैं. अगर मैं आपको बोलूं कि ये वाला हेडफोन आया है और ऐसा ऐसा करता है, will you ever buy it? बट वही जब हम सुनते हैं कि किसी सेलिब्रिटी ने इस पर्टिकुलर प्रोडक्ट को इंडोर्स किया है, जो सेलिब्रिटी इस पर्टिकुलर प्रोडक्ट को यूज किया, व्हाट इज दैट? दैट इज लाइक अ हिंटिंग. Those 3% of the people are hinting you to adopt the product in their particular direction. Okay, now your question will be how to influence those 3%, and I will also come to one more point, that is 1% of the 1%. That is a different debate altogether. इस दुनिया में कितने लोगों ने मिस्टर रोबोट देखा सीरीज? उसमें लाइन सुनिए, मेरे पूरी सीरीज में से एक लाइन सबसे काम की है, 1% of the 1%, control the language. If there are 7 billion people, there are only 7 lakh people who control 80% of the resources on this earth. Okay, if those 7 lakh people में से अगर 2 या 3 लोग भी मिल जाए और वो आपके लिए बात करने लग जाए, your job is done. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि हम उनको कॉन्फ्रेंसेस में चेस करें. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि हम उनको उनकी बटरिंग करें. They are also smart people. Obviously, they have reached to that particular position either by fate, by family, or by their own hard work. We don't know what is the USP working around them. So, if you are able to find those people in your industry, in your specifics of your industry, and you are able to impress them, don't go for a sales pitch to those people. They are very bad people. Very arrogant. They just throw you out of the office if you try to sell them anything. You can only impress them by your ideas and by your futuristic thoughts. And if you have that, and how to get that is again, it's a personal DNA. Brand आदमी खुद होता है, brand कहीं बाहर से नहीं आता है. Have you read book Alchemist? So actually you transform, not that stone converts things. So you have to understand what is there in your entire product line, in your company, what is actually working for you. Is it your people? Is it your the way of presentation? Is it the way the people accept it? It's a combination of all. Client servicing and all these things come just behind. आपको पता है अगर एप्पल का फोन आज टूटता है आपका स्क्रीन, कितनी देर लगती है वापस आने में? एक डेटा सेंटर, एक सर्विस सेंटर नहीं है उसका. देखा है कोई सर्विस सेंटर एप्पल का? 1 लाख का सामान बेच देते हैं और एक सर्विस सेंटर भी खोलने की इच्छा ही नहीं होती. Servicing is also not the business. If you are at the lower rank of the system, you have to give better services. आपके पास सिर्फ सर्विसेज ही सर्वाइवल का तरीका है. But if you are on the upper end of the system, services is not the point. The point is they have already calculated all the communication combinations which are available to them, so that they will lead over a period of time. जिससे कि जैसे एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ. मेरे पास ऑफिस में इंटरनेट है. मैं 4 MB लाइन का 21,000 रुपए पे करता हूँ टाटा. इंदौर के अंदर खेतान 7,000 रुपए 10 MB देता है. I have only one condition to Tata. Not a single second drop in my office. I want internet. Single second. अगर single second drop हुआ महीने में 2 या 3 बार तो I'm going to throw you off. I don't want. मुझे 4 MB चलेगा. मुझे स्पीड नहीं चाहिए. मुझे consistency चाहिए. And they are able to deliver it for last 3 years. Last 3 years, only 3 times it have happened that internet didn't work for me. So that is the service. तो कई बार हम चेंज क्या कर रहे हैं. अगर आप सारी डेटा सर्विस हैके का कोई लीफलेट उठा लीजिए, उसमें क्या लिखा रहता है 100 Mbps. और मेरे घर का डेटा टाटा की लाइन 10 दिन से बंद पड़ी थी और उनको लेखा नहीं देना है. आप फोन करके मुझसे तो आप बोलते लाइन लूज हो गई. सर्विस सेंटर अच्छा है, कॉल अच्छा है, सब कुछ बढ़िया है. यूज मैं अगर 10 दिन बाद अपने घर जाता हूँ, बोलता हूँ कि आई एम पेइंग मतलब फॉर लास्ट 4 मंथ्स आई वाज स्लीपिंग इन द ऑफिस ओनली. 10 दिन बाद एक बार घर गया, मैं सोचा रात को मम्मी को मूवी दिखाऊंगा, द इंटरनेट इज नॉट वर्किंग. व्हाट शुड आई डू? रात को 12 बजे तो मैं इंटरनेट चालू नहीं कर सकता. उसका तो कोई आदमी आएगा. व्हाट इज द यूज ऑफ पेइंग 200 रुपीस पर मंथ ऑन दैट शिटी सिस्टम व्हिच इज नॉट यूजफुल टू. अब बोले हमारी सर्विस ऐसी है कि हम आपको 6 घंटे में रिपेयर कर देंगे या हम 24 आवर्स में रिपेयर करके आपको दे देंगे. व्हाट्स द यूज ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर. सो आप समझने की कोशिश करें मैं क्या बोलने की कोशिश करूं. कंसिस्टेंसी इज मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट इन बिल्डिंग बिजनेस. अगर आप कंसिस्टेंट नहीं है तो आप सर्विस देते हैं. अगर आपकी प्रोडक्ट रिलायबिलिटी नहीं है तो आपको ज्यादा से ज्यादा सर्विस सेंटर खोलने पड़ेंगे और उतने ही आप रेट के नीचे जाते जाएंगे क्योंकि आपकी कॉस्ट टू मैनेज दैट प्रोडक्ट इंक्रीज सिग्निफिकेंटली एज यू गो डीपर एंड डीपर लेवल. You have to increase your cost to manage that particular product to that customer. अब एक लास्ट एलिमेंट पे मुझे डिस्कशन है वो है कि कोई भी बिजनेस के 3 एलिमेंट्स होते हैं. सेल्स, because we are talking about again on the sales. Sales has something to do with the user acquisition. So every business has 3 basic fundamentals: user acquisition, retention, and monetization. Right? So coming to the all these 3 things, I'll start with, I'll take an example of Parle Ji. ठीक है. अब Parle Ji में Parle Ji का आखिरी बार ऐड कब आप लोगों ने देखा था टीवी में? आता रहता है छोटा भी. बट 1990s में 1992 में कितना था? कहाँ खा रहे थे? निर्मा की कितना ऐड आते थे? बहुत अच्छे बॉम्बार्डिंग करते थे that dancing lady. So that was the time they were actually acquiring the users. Okay. The second model is the retention. एक बार एक आदमी ने निर्मा खरीदा, अब हर महीने जाता है उसका एक बार जबकि निर्मा का कॉस्ट खत्म होता है वो जाता है नया निर्मा लेने. मैं एग्जांपल अगर अभिनंदन के कोवर्किंग स्पेस का लेता हूं तो मान लीजिए अभिनंदन की कोवर्किंग स्पेस में 40 कंपनी आती है and Abhinandan has every 3 months a churn rate of 5 companies leaving, then he just has to get more 5 icon areas to fill the remaining place, right? अगर ये churning ratio 25 हो गया तो क्या होगा? So he has to reduce his cost significantly. आ रहा समझ में आपको? किस चीज के साथ में रिलेशन, कॉस्ट का उसके साथ में रिलेशन. Okay. Now, you are giving the service to a particular person. If the particular product has a retention, if the particular जिस आदमी ने एक बार एप्पल खरीदा वो अगली बार भी जाकर एप्पल ही खरीदेगा. जिसने पार्ले जी खाया वो हर महीने जाके पार्ले जी खरीदेगा. पार्ले जी को बार-बार ऐड नहीं करना पड़ेगा. उसकी यूजर एक्वायर कॉस्ट गिर जाएगा. अब अपन लोग यूजर एक्वायर कॉस्ट कैलकुलेट करने की कोशिश करते हैं. इंडस्ट्रीज वालों के लिए इंडस्ट्रियल तरीके से कुछ कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं. जितनी मीटिंग्स करने जाना पड़ता है, एक इकोसिस्टम इफेक्ट होता है, उसके बारे में बात करेंगे कि if everyone is taking it, I will also take it. It reduces my risk. That's called ecosystem effect. अगर सब लोगों ने एंड्रॉइड लिया तो मैं भी एंड्रॉइड ले लेता हूँ, तो एंड्रॉइड की जो एप्स मिल गई तो सबको मिले, तो सबका बेनिफिट हम एक दूसरे को मिला. दैट इज द इकोसिस्टम इफेक्ट व्हिच हैपेंस इन सेल्स. ओके, या अभिनंदन का कोई स्पेस है, अभी यहाँ 40 कंपनियां, 10 कंपनियां इसमें से बहुत अच्छी कंपनियां हैं, तो इनमें जो फाउंडर्स हैं वो फाउंडर्स अच्छे हैं, इनसे बात करना अच्छा लगता है, तो चलो मैं भी यहाँ पे आके जगह करेंगे. ठीक है, दैट्स कॉल्ड इकोसिस्टम इफेक्ट. कोई सेल्स में वर्क करता है. सेकंड चीज होती है रिटेंशन. रिटेंशन सिर्फ आपके प्रोडक्ट की क्वालिटी के ऊपर डिपेंडेंट है. If the customer is coming back to you again and again, and he has a retention model around it, then you don't have to spend every time they acquire. Do you know why the Indian VC industry, जो भी अभी आपने देखा होगा, the entire blood जो हुआ, tiny UL, raised 30 CR, वो डूब गए, और इतनी सारी कंपनियां हुई. User acquisition cost was more than $5, $6. मतलब 300 से 400 रुपए. उतने तो आप ऐसे ही बना सकते हो यूजर्स. उसका 50% खाने डिस्काउंट भी देता है, फास्ट फूड के ऑफर्स देख लो. बिजनेसेस कौन से बच पा रहे हैं? जो उतना पैसा जितना वो खर्च कर रहे थे उनको एक्वायर करने, उससे ज्यादा उनसे पैसा कमा रहे हैं, वो बिजनेसेस बच सकते हैं. उनके पास भी एक स्लाइड चांस होता है बचने का. But then you have an example of Amazon. Then you can say कि Amazon को loss making, why Amazon is doing that? See, there is a difference of dollars to rupees again, which is going on. जो आपके हर किसी के बिजनेस में आएगा, आज भी तो कल की बात है. अगर कोई रेस्ट इन द वर्ल्ड वाला है, he has more dollars, he can come and push in your market a particular product and service at a cheaper cost to just push you out of the market, so that you are he's the last person standing in line. Okay. Now last चीज है वो monetization. So this ratio of retention is actually going to decide कि आपका बिजनेस कितने समय तक सर्वाइव करेगा. ठीक है, अब अपन एक थ्योरेटिकल इसको प्रैक्टिकल एग्जांपल समझते हैं. मैंने अगर $2 में यूजर एक्वायर किया, $2 में यूजर एक्वायर करना मतलब मैंने 100 रुपए खर्च किया, मान लीजिए 100 रुपए में यूजर एक्वायर करा, उस यूजर से मैंने 130 रुपए कमाया. अब वो 30 रुपीज वापस मेरे सिस्टम के अंदर था. मैं 30 रुपीज कितने टाइम के अंदर कमाता हूँ? 130 रुपीज, लेट्स से इन पीरियड ऑफ 6 मंथ्स. तो पहला मेरा रजिस्ट्रेशन पीरियड है कि अगर मेरे को 1 मिलियन यूजर एक्वायर करना है, मैं अभी B2C की बात कर रहा हूँ, B2B की बात कर सकते हैं. तो 1 मिलियन यूजर एक्वायर करने पे जो मेरा कॉस्ट आया, उसमें से मुझे कितने टाइम के बाद में प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी का कहीं तो कोई स्कोर दिखेगा, कहीं तो कोई एंड पॉइंट दिखेगा. इसके ऊपर सारी बिजनेस की मैट्रिक्स बनी रहती है. अब आप मुझे बोलेंगे कि व्हाट इज दिस VC फंडिंग इज ऑल अबाउट. ये फंडिंग होती क्या है? जितना भी पैसा कोई भी कंपनी को इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए मिलता है, जस्ट थिंक अबाउट दैट मनी इज द फ्यूचर सेल्स रेवेन्यू. फ्यूचर सेल्स प्रॉफिट is the amount of investment you always get as an investor. Investor puts that money into your wallet. आपका जो फ्यूचर का बिल बनेगा, I recommend all of you, because all of you have came here and spend your time. People think is 0 to 1 book. Just read that book. और 3 बार 0 to 1. 0 to 1. Peter Thiel. He's a co-founder of UpStart. उसमें बहुत सारे कुछ एनालॉजीज हैं जो आपको मिल जाएंगी. दैट इज वन इज लाइक टू बी इनोवेटिव, कंपटीशन इज बैड फॉर द बिजनेस, एयरलाइन मेक्स 34 cents per seat, and how much Google makes per click. So the businesses which have a pure monopoly over their own particular category, they survive over a period of time, and they don't have to sell themselves. They start with a small notch. If you go and on Google, जितने वीडियो आपको मिल सके theories and philosophies के बारे में, just listen to his ideas. He has a very wonderful idea. He says that any company which starts from a market which is of a small size and tries to capture the maximum percentage of that market. Jैसे Facebook, when it was launched in Stanford, it controlled 80% of the market in a matter of 1 month. That's the place that are the businesses which are going to evolve. पर ये अगर हम pet food की बात करें, कुत्तों के खाना देने वाली कंपनी की बात करें, जिनको भी बहुत 300-400 मिलियन डॉलर की फंडिंग मिलती है, वो कंपनियां कभी भी अपने मार्केट का 10% भी नहीं ला पाई. तो उनके स्टैटिस्टिक्स सही थे कि मार्केट इतना बड़ा है, अगर इस मार्केट का भी 2% भी कैप्चर करेगा तो हम बहुत बड़े बन जाएंगे. बट मार्केट इतना सेग्रीगेटेड है, उसमें वेरी प्रॉब्लम्स है, देयर आर लॉट ऑफ एन नंबर ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स व्हिच आर देयर, which makes that business automatically distributed business. It cannot be solved by technology. Okay, so you have to find all those elements into your sales thing, and based on that, take decisions. And कई बार मैं बता देता हूँ आपको कि 90% of the time it is it is fluke. मतलब आपको लगता है आपको पता है, आप कर लेते हो जाता है, फिर आपकी सोचते हैं ऐसा ऐसा भी होता है और वो ज्यादा होता है. तो दोनों के बीच का कॉम्बिनेशन आपको करते रहना पड़ेगा और फ्लूक्स होते रहेंगे एंड यू विल कीप ऑन सॉल्विंग एंड आइडेंटिफाइंग द सॉल्यूशन. ठीक है, any questions?
Does India is a place for low cost?
So it's a value oriented thing. Don't change the cost. तो कॉस्ट के साथ क्या है? कॉस्ट के साथ प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी जुड़ी है और प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी आपके रिसर्च और आपके टाइप ऑफ पीपल यू हैव. यू नो आपके सेकेंडरी एक्सेल. So he taught me a very interesting thing. He told me that दो चीजें होती हैं. Either the business goes spiral up or spiral down. So ऐसा कैसे? Either you have good sales, you have good product, this sells more. You hire more intelligent people. You hire more intelligent people, they innovate more. They innovate more, they make better product, he goes up. It is a cycle, and the cycle also is on the reverse direction. You make cheap product, low cost product, you are not able to sell it. You are not able to hire good people. You are not able to hire good people. You are not able to make money. Those good people, remaining getting those people who are good in that ratio also, they quit, and over a period of let's say 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, आप ये स्कूल्स के अंदर देख सकते हो या कोई सी भी सिस्टम में जहाँ पे इकोसिस्टम इफेक्ट है, वहाँ पर आप ये एविडेंट होते हुए देखोगे कि it's a two-way process. Either it is going up or it is going down.
So let's say वॉल्यूम बहुत ज्यादा है, मतलब कोई भी प्रोडक्ट है उसका वॉल्यूम बहुत हाई है एंड वॉल्यूम को देख के आप उसको लो कॉस्ट बना रहे हो, ठीक है, क्योंकि वॉल्यूम में उसकी डिमांड मार्केट में बहुत ज्यादा है, ठीक है, आप उसको लो कॉस्ट बना रहे हो बट आपको एक क्वालिटी प्रोडक्ट करना है, you are making quality product with them.
So the answer to this question is, let's say you have a volume product, let's say which sells 10 million. Let's put a number. ठीक है, उस 10 मिलियन में से आप ये आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हो कि 1 लाख ऐसे होंगे जो उससे थोड़ा सा ज्यादा पैसा देने को तैयार होंगे बैटरी क्वालिटी. तो आप वो 9,90,000 लोगों को उठा के बचत आप उन 1 लाख लोगों पे फोकस करो और अपने प्रोडक्ट की कॉस्ट को 3 गुना की कोशिश करो. अगर वो 1 लाख लोगों को मिल गए, क्योंकि प्रॉब्लम से क्लाइंट सर्विसिंग इज द बिगेस्ट कॉस्ट. वो 1 लाख लोगों को सर्व करने की कॉस्ट आप बिना ऑफिस आए आप देखिए वीवो के बाहर सर्विस सेंटर में किस टाइप की ऑडियंस है लाइन लगी हुई है. एप्पल पूरे इंदौर के अंदर कितने फोन बेचता होगा? मान लीजिए एप्पल पूरे इंदौर में बेचता होगा 5,000 50,000. वीवो बेचता होगा 1 लाख फोन महीने में, या 1 लाख तो नहीं बेचता होगा, 1 लाख साल के 1.5-2 लाख साल के बेचता होगा, ठीक है. और उससे बिक्री कितनी? क्यों? क्योंकि उसको भीड़ लाने के लिए उसको अपनी कॉस्ट कम करनी पड़ेगी, तो उसका प्रोडक्ट नीचे होगा, तो उसको उस टाइप का ऑडियंस फेस करना होगा. उसको हायर करने के लिए उसको एम्प्लॉइज हायर करने पड़ेंगे जो उनको झेल पाएंगे, उनको झेलना पड़ेगा फिर उनको. See, replacement is जैसे बोलते हैं कंपनी से when I have a return policy, I have a replacement policy, so that directly shows the company is already acceptable. If anything happens on Apple, have you seen how arrogant they are about the replacement policy? मतलब आपको पैसे लेके मानेंगे देखने कुछ नहीं. Okay, and Apple is an example. There are so many examples in the market. Apple, I'm just using it as an example. You take car manufacturing, you take आप महिंद्रा की जीप उठा लीजिए और आप उसकी जीप को दूसरी किसी गाड़ी की कंपनी से जीप से कंपेयर करके देख लीजिए, डिजाइन को कंपेयर करके देख लीजिए. You will always find things heavy. Any other question? Okay, so I just finished my talk with so I know all of you have applications about China. China के जो आपने दिमाग में इमेज है कि वो अपनी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर में थे and they were manufacturing on the masses. They are moving up the value chain. They are building companies. They are innovating now. वो कचरा काम इंडिया में नहीं आ पाएगा बिकॉज इंडियन कॉस्ट इज मच हायर देन दैट. वो कचरा काम अफ्रीका जाएगा. ठीक है. तो हमारे पास सिर्फ एक ही स्कोप है कि हम लोग वैल्यू क्रिएशन पे फोकस करें, वैल्यू क्रिएशन वाले प्रोडक्ट्स पे फोकस करें, और ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम ओनली वैल्यू क्रिएशन के लिए ओनली वर्क. देयर इज नथिंग एल्स व्हिच इज गोइंग टू सर्वाइव.
Can we know of your venture?
Okay. So I have two ventures. One venture is I'm moving out of mobile now, mobile apps, because I understood that there are 2 million apps and I'm not so smart to make 2 million one. So I have wrote a bit predict, which actually predicts the Bitcoin prices and which does automated trading, and it makes weekly 8%. And so giving me an example, because we asked this question, मैं जब क्लियर स्टोर था तो मेरा दूसरा प्रोडक्ट जो हम ई-कॉमर्स के स्टोर्स के लिए बना रहे थे, इसके थ्रू हम रीमूव PayU and we actually transferred PayU to many of our apps. So we sell, मतलब हमने 1000 स्टोर ऑलरेडी कॉन्फ़िगर कर चुके हैं, लाइव भी कर चुके हैं. हमने वो प्रोडक्ट पे $20 पहले फ्री दे रहे थे, so we gave 250 apps free, but not a single guy released that app. When we paid $20, people started releasing it. Now we sell that app at $350. But now we have realized this over a period of time we want to report that business, either throw it into industrial or sell it to somebody. We don't want to be in that business, because over a period of time we have understood that business is also becoming non-scalable business, because if everyone can do it, then we don't want to do it. That's my clear philosophy in any business. Time पर mobile करना था, तो mobile 16 MHz के थे. When we were working on just products, looking at Google Photoshop code Photoshop template products. And now the BitPredict is a technology that we are predicting the market, and we are doing this. So the crypto will become the next big thing. It'll jump to something else. That's for this process to identify. हमने VR और VR में भी काम किया था. So we have worked with VR. We have worked with NPDOs. So we actually deployed 5,000 cardboards during the CNS in the hockey rooms with tourism board as well as technical. So we are always looking for something which is going to be game changer. अभी हम लोग टेम शो के तरीके से आगे ट्राई कर रहे हैं. इसलिए मैं 4-5 डेमो देंगे और मैंने बोला है कि we are working on how to make augmented reality 3D models directly integrated into a team show. So anyone can upload this 3D model. जैसे कि हम लोग Amazon या Alibaba में तो प्रोडक्ट देखते तो हमारी प्रॉब्लम ये है कि 3D कैसा दिखेगा आपको समझ में नहीं आता. So we are making a store which is open source where anyone can upload this 3D product into it, and a person can actually see in 3D how the product is going to look like. So we are still in the R&D phase. Complete हो जाएगा, ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लगेगा, ओपन सोर्स है, मोस्टली 1 महीने के बाद इसमें वर्कशॉप डेमो हो जाएगा. उसको एक बार ट्राई करके देखेंगे, वो भी देखा है ठीक है, बिकॉज़ अपना प्रोडक्ट आएंगे सो और कुछ और ठीक.
Thank you, Virat. Thank you, Virat. So before we close, I would like to announce the puzzle winners. Adin Shukla. Swapnil Jain. Pankaj Vyas. If you can just come up to the side, Nitesh Maheshwari. Deepak Joshi and Arjun yes. So I would like to thank you all for being a part of this session. As mentioned earlier, on a Saturday it is not very easy to come and listen to someone talk. So thank you so much for coming today and making this event a special event for us. So we promise to be back in Indore with another special probably topic. We will ask you for your suggestions and we will come up with that. And we have a spectacular lineup of speakers as well as we had today. A special thank you to our speakers as well. Thank you for taking your time out and coming today. So if you all are looking for a payment gateway, you know who to reach out to. There are 4 of us here and we will be happy to help you out. So we are now opening the session for networking. There are roles and soft links for you on the side and the speakers are going to be around. You can speak to them and get your queries answered. Thank you so much for coming. Good night.